critics. We're all critics in our own way. We like this. We don't like that. Oh, that looks good on me. That looks bad on me. Or, I love that show. I disagreed with the critics though. Or, I love that show. I agree with the critics. Even, well, the critics say it's really good, so I'm going to go. Well, what determines what is a critic? Who's the critic? But we always go back to a certain few. And the reason why is because they know what they're talking about. Ours is more of an opinion. Theirs is based upon years of study and giving it all to their craft. And as someone that, especially when I was doing the Burning Zone, and we were coming out every week, don't think for a second I wasn't waiting to see what the critics said the next morning. It was kind of always a scary but cathartic at the same time experience. So I thought, why not have a real critic on the show, and let's hear from what she has to say, what the professionals have to say about how they can influence a career one way or the other just with a couple of punches on the keyboard, a swipe of a pen, and how they handle that responsibility. So I got here tonight, the critic, writer, Jessica Gomez.
Hey.
Hey Jessica, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Really good. So you are a critic for horror films.
Yes.
What happened in your childhood? If you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. I got time. But if you don't,
how much time do you have?
If you don't, I understand. It's like I'm going to grow up and be a critic for horror films. Now, for someone like me who has made horror films and comes from that background, your words could make or break my career.
And I take that into consideration with every review that I write.
Okay. Now let's get in the weeds with it, because people, this is the first time I've ever got to interview an actual critic, other than just back and forth on the set between ourselves, pretending to be critics. So, yeah. Okay, and so we got your childhood covered.
Yeah.
First of all, do you catch yourself ever being torn?
Yes, all the time. I try and think about what message the film is trying to say, and I take that into consideration. Even if I didn't necessarily enjoy the film, I will still take into consideration. I keep saying into consideration. I've said it like 5 times.
Well, you definitely take things into consideration.
Yes.
But I think as a critic, you've got to take a lot of things into consideration.
Yeah.
So you're getting into more of the science of being a critic, as opposed to just, I was just wanting, maybe a quick, sometimes it really hurts, but I can see that there's really a torture there, because you do know you're affecting people's lives.
Especially when I review indie films, I know that people are working with a very limited budget and they're pouring their heart and soul into this art that they're making.
Yeah.
So I never give a positive review if I don't think it's warranted, but I do think about these things. They don't have $1 million budgets to work with.
I totally agree. It's doing a union film. It's completely different. For example, on a union film, we would shoot maybe 3-4 pages a day. On an indie, you're shooting 6 to 18 pages a day.
Yeah. And
you have very, very little money, but so it's more of a gift of the heart. People are working for way below scale.
Mm-hmm.
But they really came into their own in the 90s, especially horror.
Mm-hmm.
I think due to Buffy and some of the networks where you started pushing.
It became more mainstream.
It did. After Star Trek and stuff, it just kind of morphed into monsters and actually some classic horror brought back and given new life.
Right.
Like the Penny Dreadful.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on Showtime, that series, they took it to a whole different level.
Yeah, I think, well, now, especially with all of these streaming services and everyone's competing for these scripts, there's a little bit more artistic freedom, and people can kind of do more of what they want to do without the boundaries.
They're doing it out of passion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we're getting some of our best work
Absolutely.
now versus when there was only paid channels where you had more freedom, but still the networks
They have a lot of say
Right.
and control over what you can do.
A lot of artistic control, and that's what happened on the Burning Zone halfway through. They just, Thanksgiving, they fired everyone and kept one cast member and the costume director and me. I've never felt guilty for not being fired.
You're like, where did everybody go?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm staying on, but we were leaving for Thanksgiving hiatus. That's when
Okay.
we told everyone at night. The critics and the fan base within like one episode just went, what happened?
Right.
When did we all of a sudden,
People get attached,
Right.
and then you completely change the format.
And they reeled me back to doing some high-end special effects, but they had changed their cast, and it was, and then pilot season came up, and Rob Cohen had a really cool special effects film he wanted me to do. I'm like, okay.
Right.
What pilot am I going to do this year? Your guys' words made or broke us every week. I mean, it affected our numbers, but now it's so much streaming.
Yes.
Are you out looking for certain things to critique, or is it given to you by a company, or what's step one?
There are publicists that reach out to me to ask me to review their films, and then there are certain things that you just hear about and you want to go to the theater to see it. So I do a little bit of everything. If there's anything I don't want to review, I don't. Sometimes I get, my personal taste is I don't like really hardcore horror movies where there's like a lot of torture. So if I get something like that, I will just pass it on to a colleague, or I just don't review it, just because that's my personal taste.
So your editor gives you that freedom?
I have a great editor, and he pretty much lets me do whatever I want.
Really?
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, in one aspect, that's kind of what they're paying you to do.
Yeah, he values my words,
Right.
and, we have a great working relationship, so I go to him and say, hey, what do you think about this? And he usually says, go for it.
You can pan a film, and the rest of the world loves it.
Yes.
You're not looking good as a critic.
Right.
But usually it's always pretty much a good split, 50-50. There's always going to be some disagreement, but pretty much the critics, nail it. You guys, do your jobs. I don't necessarily always understand how you get to your end results. And there's been so many times on film I'd be like, oh my God, this is the critics are, my career's over. And you guys didn't even give it hay. And it'd be like, oh, thank God they missed it.
They slept on that one.
Yeah, it's like, because you actually write for a company.
Yes, so I freelance write, but I write for allhorror.com. So he has other writers and people that work for him, but we're all freelance. So so he's based in another state. We do everything online, so it makes it really simple.
I think it'd be even tougher as a critic to do horror film now, is the simple fact that technology has moved so far that it's like, are we watching real or are we watching something?
Yeah, well,
CGI.
CGI has changed so much in film, sometimes for the better, sometimes not, because there are things that practical effects will get that you can't get with CGI.
Right, we had that problem with the Burning Zone because CGI was just coming into play. I know I keep bringing this show back up because it's a really cool show, people, and you can go to IMDb which I haven't kept up on my page. I'll own it.
He just said that he's missing at least 20 things on there his update.
You had to say that. You had to tell him. Yeah, I'm like, I think it's actually 21 films I need to put on there.
So everything that's on there, that's not anything.
Yeah, it's not updated. Either that or I had a very short career. But I noticed that Marine Zone keeps popping up, and I saw it on Amazon. And it was a show that really affected my life on a daily basis because every week I was pouring it out. And my labs were working 24 hours a day, you know, and so we didn't have really time to worry about what you guys had to say, but my next episode was only as good as what you had to say about the last episode.
Right.
You know, and that's something that the suits look at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm only as good as my last job.
Right.
And here the critics are, you know, if they're panning me and ripping me to shreds,
it's not looking good for you.
not, you know, yeah, things are not looking good. Yeah. When your manager suggests you take a sabbatical.
Right. Never a good sign.
Yeah, not a good sign. Yeah. Okay. Do you ever worry sometimes about when you're writing a review on someone because you don't know them, and you don't know the producers, the directors, and all that? I mean, do you ever or who their fan base is?
About retaliation?
Yeah.
I do, because really anything that you write that you're putting out to the public, people are going to have opinions about it. Sometimes there's just even one negative comment, but you know, you think about it and
Because
it doesn't feel great.
Right, well, you as a critic,
Yeah.
then are being criticized.
Yeah,
So
there's the other side of it, is
right.
that, you know, when you're writing these things, you have to just kind of deal with what people are going to say about what you wrote. People are very serious about the films that they love, and the horror community is extreme.
Oh, that's this is something I wanted to get. This would be a good point to talk about. This episode is going to be done 2 parts. She's coming back in 2 weeks. I'm doing a makeover on her on how I believe the horror community thinks she should look like if she's going to be a critic for horror films, because you and I have faced the very same problem. And I was just a little bit younger when I faced my problems.
Shots fired.
But yeah, they would always be like chat rooms and things like that back then. When the fan base first met me, you know, I think they expected like an interview with a vampire or something. And I mean, here I'm in Valentino.
Right.
You know, and they're like going, I mean, manliner at least. Give me something here.
Throw me a bone.
You know, yeah. I mean, they're like going, well, you can't create horror. Look at you. You know, I mean, you face the same problem.
Yes, I think the blonde hair throws people sometimes. They have an expectation of what they think I'm like, and they see me and I don't look like I love horror, but I do. I've loved it since I was a child. So, yeah, it'll be fun to see your interpretation of...
Well, I think you guys start thinking about it. You have 2 weeks. You can even write. You comment on us what you guys think she should look like and everything.
Yeah, I'm open to your ideas.
Yeah, that's going to be part 2. How will she look? You guys are going to have to stay tuned for that one and see us in a couple of weeks. So all things being even, you get to catch up on some of my work, and
yes,
and
I have homework.
You know, so you can like, you know, I had no idea what you were thinking about my work.
Yeah, I've seen photos, but I need to watch the show and see how it translates to.
Did I read the script correctly? Basically, what it boils down to. I mean, because that's in the films you critique, in the films I've made. That's where the money's being spent.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Because that can make or break a film.
Right. So be curious to tell me what you think. And everyone, in 2 weeks we'll have a reveal. So I'm curious to hear what you guys all think she should look like. Feel free. Do photoshopping if you want.
Oh boy.
Please subscribe. We need your subscription. It's free. Totally free. I had somebody ask me last week, it's like, so I don't really want another building just on my credit card. They just want a Google account. That's all.
Because
they
the
want.
content is so good,
Yeah, I
they're
know.
willing to pay for it.
Okay. So, see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Boom.
I had a personal blog while I was engaged, while I was planning my wedding, and I chronicled my adventures. I'm really a realist, and I'm a kind of a sarcastic person, so I wasn't.
What critic is it? I mean,
Yeah, right, I guess so.
A critic mentioned she's sarcastic. Well, who knew?
I was trying to find humor in my experiences, and from that blog, I use that as a jumping off point for my book. So I wrote a book called The Realist Bride, and it's a book on how to plan your wedding.
I'm sorry. It's just, I wasn't expecting. You know, okay, so yeah, last night we watched the slasher film,
Right.
and this morning I was like, you should have saw the chiffon that I saw this morning. It was so soft and pretty, honey.
So, yeah, so I wrote the book, and I've been on a couple of lists for Best Wedding Planner.
Okay, no,
Bride's
seriously.
Magazine chose me 2 years in a row.
Okay, don't know if I necessarily see the leap from horror critic to wedding critic. I mean,
I'm layered.
There's layers. You got layers.
Right.
But that also does show how critics, people need to understand something about critics that I don't even give you guys just reward. And that is that it's not just that one thing that you can be a critic in. It's just you choose to make a living off this genre or this lane or that lane.
We have a certain kind of mind. The
Exactly.
way our mind works, we are constantly thinking about how things work. Why are they like this? So, in a cerebral sense, you could write about many different things and be able to critique them in the same way, because it's just kind of the mind of a critic.
So it's kind of like our show. It's all over the place.